I'm Mara and today I show you how to sew my Valentina blouse. You can use the pattern and sew the Valentina blouse, but you can also use it and sew it as a dress. Today I sew the dress, but it is exactly the same, so you can choose what you want. For the dress I use this cotton fabric. I think it's perfect because you need a fabric which you can iron very good. So I would choose nothing with polyester or so. So now we can start to cut our pieces. I only lengthen the hem of the blouse and the rest is the same. So now we can cut our pieces. If you want to sew the blouse, you can cut it normally like this. And if you want the dress, I only add here at the hem 36 centimeters, so I make a parallel line here and also here, and yeah, then I cut it normally and I do the same. This is the front pattern. I do the same with the back, also at 36 centimeter, and yeah. So, and now it's very important that we make our notches. We have here the hem notches. For the blouse you cut it here directly, and also here on all these lines I make a small notch here, so I make a small cut with the scissors. So I made it here on all lines, not the first, and here also not the last, because this is only the seam allowance. And then also here at the front, because here it is open and here we will close it later. So, and then we can place our pattern here to the dress hem, like this. So, and then we can also make the notches here at the hem. Yeah, and then I do the same on the back pattern, and then we can also cut bias tape for neckline and armholes. Here at the back hem, make sure that matches to the center back. Here it is a little bit wider because it's the hem is a little bit like this. Yeah. But then we can make our notches here. And then we can cut the bias tape for the armholes and the neckline. And here it depends a little bit on if you want it also, or how many front ties you want. For my dress now I will use only one. Yeah, but you can cut a little bit more and then later you can decide. Yep. So then we can start with the pleats. So I have here the front. Make sure you have one left and one right side. So here's the right side, and then we can start to fold the pleats, and then I pin it and iron it, and then we, if we have all, then we can start sewing. So now we can start with the first pleat. Here's the center front and this is the right side. And we have here the first notch, the second and the third. And I take the second notch here and place it like this to the fourth notch. So here's the first notch. It's always the start of the pleat. Here's the middle of the pleat and here's the end. So I place it like this, and I do the same on the hem. So we have one pleat from the neckline to the hem, and then I do this with the next one, and again. Yeah. So I do the same here on the hem. Here's the first, second, and third. I take the second notch. I do it here like this. Then we have here a straight line, and then I place it to the next one like this, and here like this. So, and then we can pin it with needles and later then iron it, or we can iron it now or later. So, and then we do the next. So here is the middle, and here so I place this one to the next like this. So, and then we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pleats in the front here, and only one here on the side. It's a little bit wider from the distance, and here we take the first notch and place it to the third one, like this, and then all pleats have the same direction. So, and then I do the other side, and then we can make the bag. Yeah. But first I iron it. So then we can fold the pleats on the back pattern. Here I start in the center back. Here's the center back, and here's the first pleat. On this side I folded to this, so here's the first notch, here the second, so I take the second notch and place it like this, and here on the other side I do it this way. And so here's the center back, and we have always the pleats away from the back, like this. So I do it now the same as the front, yeah, and then we can sew. So now we can sew the pleats, but we do not sew the pleat from here to the hem. We sew only around the half of it. I do it like this, that I sew maybe this one unto this point, this a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, that it looks a little bit messy at the end. I like it that way. Here on this dress I made it the same, so I have here always different lengths. Yeah, I like it, but you can also sew all on the same height, but yeah. So yeah, I think I make maybe the shortest around 30 or 40, and the longest maybe 50, but you can do it however you want. Yeah, and when we sew the pleats, I do it always like this, that I open the pleat here, and then I sew it here in the fold of the pleat, and maybe it's easier if you pin the pleat like this, and then sew only here these two layers together, and this is open then from the outside, so this is the right side. Yeah, I do this on all pleats here in the back and also in the front. In the front you can sew here the first pleat on the same length if you want. I think I do it because then it looks more clean in the center front. And yeah, so I always open one pleat, sew it, then I open the next, sew it, and you also can pin here maybe a needle at the end of the pleat that when you're sewing, that you know how long. I think I do it here on the side like this. This is around 28 centimeter, and then I think I do the second one a little bit longer, like this. So it's 55. And then we can sew here over the neckline, and also over here the shoulder, and here only to secure the pleats, that it stays here in place. I do this with normal stitch, 5 millimeters. Yeah, and then we can sew the center front. Yeah, but first here on the front and also on the back. Yeah. So now we can sew the center front from the hem to the notch. I place it right sides together. And then we sew it from the hem to the notch with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And now we can iron the center front seam allowance open, and then we fold it here 5 millimeters to the inside, and then here iron it again. And I do the same here on the neckline. I fold it here 5 millimeters and then 5 millimeters again, and iron it, and then we sew here close to the edge. I do this here on both sides. And then we can place the back pattern to the front. And so here the shoulder seams with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And then we can also finish the seam. You can do it with the normal zigzag stitch or serger if you have. To finish the shoulder seam, I use this stitch. Here the length 1 and the width around 4. Yeah, but you can also do it with the normal zigzag or serger. Then I iron the seam allowance to the back on both sides. And then we can sew the armhole. For this I used my bias binding. I placed it here on the right side. So, and then I sew here with 7 millimeters all the way to the other side. And this one is a little bit too short, so I sew 2 together. So I sew the bias binding here together. This is the nice side and also this, and I fold it here like this, and then I sew from this point to this, and then we can iron the seam allowance open, and then we can start with the armhole. And then I sew it nice sides together to the armhole. So then we can cut the seam allowance a little bit. then it is easier to sew the binding. And then we fold the binding here on half, and then here over the seam, like this. And then you can sew here from the outside, so from the right side here in the seam shadow. But on the left side you have to make sure that it's over the seam, so it's not here, it should be like this. So I make a lot of needles, but you can also sew here very close to the edge, then it's a little bit easier, or you sew here in the seam shadow. And then I place the seam allowance here to the back, and only make here a few stitches. And then we can do the same with the neckline. Here you have to decide if you want here the front tie, but I think I do it here in the middle, so here then it's open, and I do it the same way than the armhole, and at the end I sew here the front tie. So now we can do the same with the neckline. If you want the front tie here in the middle, you can start here on the neckline directly. I would, maybe one centimeter seam allowance, and then I sew here with 7 millimeters, and later we fold it here like this to the inside. And if you want the front tie here on the neckline, you should leave around 40 centimeter here, and then start here sewing. So this is a little bit too short now. Yep. First I sew the bias tape here together, but then I sew it here with 7 millimeters, and then we fold it, and then we fold also the front tie. But I want it like this, that I have only in the middle the front tie, so I make here only 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I sew it here all the way around. and then we fold it to the inside, and then I make my front tie here. And then we can iron the front tie. I iron it here on half, and then both sides on half again, and then I sew it here close to the edge. I make only one front tie, so I need two of them. If you want two front ties or three or so, you need more, but yeah, I do it like this. And then we can iron the whole dress a little bit and the hem, and I do it here that I iron it around 7 millimeters or 1 centimeter, and then once again, and then I also sew here close to the edge, and Now I sew the front tie. I sew it here 12 centimeter from the neckline, and I place it here like this, and then I sew in the same seam, and then I fold the string to the front. So, and then I sew here and very close to the edge again.